Hey everybody, it's Taylor, and today I'm bringing you a cozy art video. I wanted to make another video, but I didn't want it to be high energy, I wanted it to be pretty calm. So this video is about pixel art. That's fun. I haven't done pixel art on the channel before. I've always dabbled in it, but I haven't made a video on it yet, so... I don't do a lot of pixel art, but it's something I've always enjoyed, so I wouldn't say it's my preferred style, but it is something that I've gone back to a lot throughout my life. Today in particular, we are going to be looking at the evolution of a character through style. So let's start with looking at this example. All right, so this is the piece, or at least the starting point. This is Elisa and Goliath from Gargoyles. Go figure. We'll get into that once we start the time lapse in our discussion. But I wanted to talk about the base piece to show you where we started and what I wanted to try to figure out for the fourth iteration going forward. All right. For this video, or excuse me, for this piece, I looked at my previous versions of drawing these characters in pixel art. Now, I've drawn a bunch of the cast in pixel art, actually, because it's something I've liked to do throughout my time drawing or making art. But these are a relatively, it's probably a year and a half, if not 2 years ago, but a relatively recent pixel art endeavor where I was figuring them out. So they go from left to right, as you can see, and if I zoom in a little bit more. So left to right is first iteration to most recent iteration. The left, for both Goliath and Elisa, we're not focusing on Goliath today, but just to help show you the variance. The left shows you my first attempt. Now, the left is a very basic iteration, right? There's nothing really exciting about the left. It's a very kind of standard pixel art style. Now, it could be even simpler, obviously, but I wanted enough detail to show some limbs, right? To show a little bit of character in their poses and in the way they look just generally. Now, I was unhappy with these because I thought they were a little too simplistic. I didn't think they captured enough of the character. And perhaps I was, in some ways, too literal in my form language. I kept everything very to the books, if that makes sense. I kept everything sort of in the standard shaping you would typically think of as far as general proportions. So when I remade them, I wanted to redo it and I wanted to try to get out of my instinctual style of drawing these characters. I wanted to embed them with more exaggerated proportions because they are cartoon characters for one, but I wanted them to be more interesting visually on the screen. I mean, you can tell they look a bit muddy, obviously, in the first two examples for Goliath and Elisa, and I don't really think they're that interesting to look at, and especially if I animated them, like, sure, there could be something there, but I don't think their style has enough substance. So when I went to make the second versions, I looked up a bunch of different styles for pixel art characters, and I kind of melded the characters into the styles that I found. I don't remember specifically what they were, but you can look up different styles of pixel art online and probably find something similar to these exaggerated proportions. Now, Goliath is much more exaggerated, and again, we're not getting him today, really. But Elisa, you can tell, first I made her taller. I wanted to show a little bit more of her body. I was hoping to capture more expression in her face. Maybe have her look more... have her feel more interesting to look at, look more in line with the length of a human body. I think that was really kind of the more standardized, that was more of what I was going for. Like I said, for sure, I wanted her to just be bigger. I wasn't happy with the size of the original sprite. Now, what caused me to go to the third version? Well, with the second version, I thought I pushed it, but I didn't. I pushed it in certain ways, but I didn't feel like I pushed it enough, right? So as you go into the third version, you can see, well, she's shorter again. That was kind of a secondary effect due to the size of Goliath and try to keeping them in scale, right? Because he shrunk as well. But In the second version, it didn't feel like I captured enough of her face. Like maybe I got more body and that gave a little bit more pose and character to just the way she looked, but I didn't have enough to show her real face or expression. I didn't feel like it captured enough of that. Obviously, I knew the skin tone was wrong, so I played with colors a little bit as well. And that got me to the third version. But at least for me, looking at it, she looks way too squat. Perhaps it looks more like her in a general sense, but I don't feel like it looks proportionally correct, and I feel like I lost a little bit of the style in trying to get a little bit of the accuracy. So that brings us to the fourth version, or the one we're working on today. So let's try that out. All right, getting into the video now. About time. So as I said, I captured more of her face for the third iteration, but I felt like her body was missing. So I started it in a very obvious kind of sense. I started with taking the head from the third one and trying to incorporate it onto the second body. There was no reason inherently to start over totally from scratch because, for one, it doesn't make sense. I already put the effort in. And two, I liked aspects of both. So through merging those, I was able to know where I wanted to start at least, and that got us to here. Now, maybe it's worth discussing as well, but I was hoping that this video could be a little bit low effort. Not from like a, I don't want to try, but from like an effort. I was hoping this might feel slightly cozy and feel a little bit relaxed, because I don't do many videos that are kind of relaxed like this, and I thought it might be nice. So yeah, I hope it is nice. I guess let me know. But here you see we've incorporated the head and the body. Something with the second position as well that I didn't like is I thought the hair had quite a bit of shape to it. I thought it was kind of interesting to look at, but as I thought about it from just like a general character sprite perspective, her hair was sweeping forward, which doesn't really make sense. Maybe if she was stopping, the hair would animate and move forward eventually, but it should, if anything, flow behind her because she's going to walk forward. So I wanted the hair to move back. After I realized that, then I knew that I still wasn't happy with Elisa's face. This general color palette I was much happier with. She looked far too orange on the left. Elisa is, if I recall correctly, Native American and black, actually. But in the show, she's much lighter skinned, I guess, leaning more into the Native American aspect. And the oranges were just far too vibrant in the previous version. So we're starting with her face here. One thing I tried to incorporate, and you'll see me bounce around with as we go through this, is I was trying to figure out how to get some expression into her face. When you're dealing with pixels, and these are literal pixels, I mean, if you've never done pixel art before, it's like every pixel really matters. And that's one reason I like pixel art. It's so, such a refinement, right? Like you're so limited in the amount of pieces that you have, right? It's like making a puzzle. Like you only have so many pieces to make the final product. So it's kind of a nice way to focus in on the details that matter instead of focusing in on all the details. It's a good way to kind of consolidate and challenge yourself in some capacity. So maybe that's one reason I've always liked pixel art. But as I said, I was trying to incorporate not only to get her face to look more accurate, but I was trying to incorporate a little bit of expression into her. Elisa has kind of an attitude, just like a confidence, not like she thinks she's superior necessarily, but she has like a swagger, if you will. So between that and getting her hair to look right, like those are the two biggest things that I was starting off with this. Generally, I liked the legs a lot more than the third version. I thought they were much more expressive. They obviously added to the height, like I said. But that's where we started. So, also, coffee sip. If you're drinking coffee or tea or soda or energy of any kind, let me know. It's been a while. Yeah, as I said, we're just going to go through this and talk about the interesting things that come up along the way. So her jacket, after starting, I thought I liked it, but I realized that I hadn't ever really pushed the jacket far enough. it still felt too truncated. It felt too short compared to the length of the body, the size of the head I was going for. So I kind of figured I'd start over. I thought originally I liked the general shape, but I thought it was too muddy. I thought the colors didn't do enough to accentuate the shapes that were there. It was just kind of a little bit confusing to look at. So I kind of started over. And if I recall correctly, most of the character sections are in about 3 to 4 colors. I think her legs are 3 colors. The jacket actually gets a little bit more because I go so dark in places. So I don't hold fast to the rule of everything needs to be this very specific amount of colors, which might be inaccurate to how some pixel art is thought of when you're doing 16, 32, all the different bits. But yeah, just kind of going what works best for what I'm trying to convey here. I think the head is 4 or 5 for the tones in the face, and then the hair is more, but I strip it back a little bit. I think it was 4 originally. I think I cut it down to 3 and try to unify them a bit by the end. But yeah, what's trying to be conveyed here, if it's not obvious looking at her jacket, right? So she has lapels coming down. It's a leather jacket that kind of zips in the middle. It's a little bit puffy, it's a little bit big, and then she has her arms tucked in the side pockets. Like this, I guess. But you can see it looks a little bit muddy. I'm still not happy with it, even though I refined some of the colors. Maybe it's a little clearer. The bottom too is supposed to allude to kind of like a scrunched waistband on the bottom of the jacket. So while I did like her legs more, I still thought they weren't accurate. They almost felt splayed too far, even though I like the kind of exaggerated lines that they're showing with their shaping, right? They're more of a stylized look, but I didn't feel like they were very practical in the sense of creating a sprite that was going to move around. They had attitude, but they didn't feel like they had enough useful utility, I guess. So I do work to straighten the legs quite a bit, but still try to keep them into a stylized look, which we'll get into as we move through this. Yeah, you'll see Elise's face is going to be where most of the effort is spent, and by the end of it, I'm really happy with how she came out. It wasn't like 100% deliberate effort, and maybe that in of itself is not genuine. I spent a lot of time focusing on the way that she looks, and making the character probably took like 2 hours, something like that, 2.5 hours in that range to design this character and get it finished. But yeah, a lot of that was on her face and her hair, trying to get that to be shaped correctly. But it's difficult, like I said, when you're working with pixels, because you're very restricted in the shapes you can make. You can't do a straight line. Everything has to be stagger stepped. So figuring out how to do that with the right colors, right? You need to figure out colors that are similar, but have enough difference to show depth to a face, right? If the colors are too far apart, like the one on the right there, the second face, that one is almost too stark in the contrast between the colors. So it doesn't blend enough. It looks too Picasso, if that makes sense. But again, they need to be distinct enough colors so they do show depth and they do stand out. You don't want them to blend too much or the face is going to look really flat. So all things to work out. Her eyes too were something I really played around with, trying different directions, going from a 2 tall eye to a 1 tall eye. Goliath above her is a 1 tall eye. I settled on that for him, but I thought originally with her I'd keep it 2 because that allows you to give color, it allows you to give a little bit of depth. You can see on the third face when that comes up next to her, I have some darker grays above to allude to like shadow. So those were things I was playing with. Here's the first, like, I really start changing up the layout of her face. She has kind of a stereotypical Disney face when you look at the actual reference image. Like it's very rounded cheek, and then it curves down normally. And it's really hard to do that in pixel art without just having one pixel sticking out of the side of her head. So I kind of reshaped the base look of her face and skewed it over. When I did that, you can see I have a raised eyebrow here as well. I was able to kind of fit that back in to try to get some more character back into the face. But I take it away and I put it back over and over and over again. So it's a constant shifting process. Moreover, or I guess additionally, you'll see as she moves around and I move forward, I'm constantly repositioning, right? So like if the jaw has to be back farther based on how I structure the head, then the face has to move forward to be in line with the torso. Then you need to make sure the torso is in line with the legs. So there's a lot of shifting here and there and everywhere that goes into making the character look believable. With her hair, what I was trying to capture again is she has like one big piece of hair coming down and over, and then it's split, it's parted on the side, and then she has, all the body of her hair behind her. So I was trying to capture that with this hairstyle, and that was difficult. It was hard to get the rounded shape to blend into that big bang in the front, and then difficult to not make that bang look too large at the same time. You can see she's really starting to get to a point here, or she's really changed at this point, right? She doesn't really look like the third or the fourth version anymore. And here's where it really starts coming together for me, is right here. So I had those arms in the pocket, and while I like that, she does do that in the show quite a bit, it felt like it made her look too short. It made her look too stumpy. It didn't read as well as arms as I was hoping on the scale that it was. I decided to take one arm out and give her a gun. So at least as a cop, she always carries a gun. And I thought this would do a lot to add to the length of the character and make her read better. And once I did this, it was able to come much further because I was able to really start focusing on how I wanted the character to look, getting out of the original idea of like, it needed to be this way or it needed to be this way, and really just trying to find out, okay, I'm done with incorporating these two together. Now let's really think about what I want to be different for this iteration. So really that arm, really these legs. So now you can see the legs are really starting to change. I go much more vertical with them. I do kind of a standard cartoonification where one side is straight, one side is curved. Maybe my hands aren't a great example for showing that. But that's what we were trying to do here. Make those really look feminine, but also have some form. That's not what I was trying to say. Make them look feminine, but also make them look like usable legs. They're not spread crazy far out. So they have shape, but they're still kind of simplified, But yeah, she's really starting to come together at this point, I think. Yeah, here as well is where I start to pay attention to having definitive light source. Like I knew that, obviously, you always know that, but when you're in the middle of it, sometimes I get stuck in the process of like, just define the shapes, right? Like, because I'm only working with so many colors, so I'm like, yeah, light on top, dark on bottom. But here's where I start to pay attention to having a light source for the character. Obviously adds to making the character look much more believable, read more clearly. So I decided to have a light source essentially coming from the left side that shaped how the legs look, which gives them some depth. And now I'm trying to do the same thing for the jacket. I'm trying to have the light on the left-hand side. So theoretically, the right side should be deeper. It should be darker. There'll be less colors used than the brighter side, basically. And that goes a long way to giving depth. So, yep, making sure her head is properly balanced. As well, too, if you see the canvas moving around a lot, I'm using Procreate, which isn't the best for pixel art. It definitely works. The problem is that when you're doing pixel art in Procreate, they're so small that it'll blur the pixels every single time. So I just had to screen record my iPad multiple times every time I stopped or started working on this. That's why it moves around more. You're seeing the lasso tool or color selectors. With a general time lapse baked into Procreate, it can't capture things at this scale. It just blurs it out every time, which is really annoying. Which is why it turned me off from doing pixel art for a long time or showing some of these previously, because I had time lapse for them, but they looked god awful. But here we go. Here is where her face really starts to change, and it really starts to get character, right? She looks like she has attitude, and it really starts to kind of become an entirely individual version, stylized version of this character. She's basically more in a full half view. Like, there's still a little bit of an edging to her face, and we keep refining it further than this. So instead of like a 3/4 where you can still basically see the whole face, I shifted a lot and get it much more on an angle. And again, that wasn't really 100% deliberate, but I was trying to be open to finding the best way to display the character. So I just kept skewing it until I found ways to properly show the fullness of her face. And you can see at this angle, that cheek really comes through. It has a softness to that edge on the back side. It doesn't look quite as harsh because you have just kind of a straight line leading it there. And that allows me to get a straight line basically going up towards the forehead. So all of that were things I was looking for, and I just couldn't figure out how to do it until I started to shift her head into this new position. At this point too, we've finally started reworking the colors for her skin. It takes a little bit to fully get there. Like I said, I knew version 3 was closer to what I was looking for, but it felt too muted. I wanted a little bit more color, not quite so pale, I guess. And just like I said, making sure all those colors really balance off of each other and look nice. So yeah, here's where it starts to go even further. Just figuring out how that far eye looked was difficult. I knew I had to make it smaller. It couldn't be 2 pixels, but then figuring out how to do 1 pixel that looked appropriate was really difficult for a while. You can tell we've reworked everything at this point. I think every part of her has now changed between version 2 and version 3 that we used as the starting point. She's kind of her entirely independent character at this point. But we're still not happy. We're still trying to define it. You can tell in the previous versions for her hair, for example, where I was just working, I used a much brighter blue as the accent color. I found when making this version that it was actually too bright. It pulled too much attention, and it felt almost too shiny for hair. So with this version, I decided to tone that down with the highlight for the hair and make it much flatter. But what that allowed it to do is not pop out too much, so the layers of the hair blended together more, and instead drew more attention to her face, or like her jacket, which is very vibrant. And I thought that played much nicer than trying to make the hair super shiny as well, because it just wasn't suiting the tone, right? But yeah, as you can see now, she has character with her eyebrow being popped. She has the much more truncated face, and she's basically done. We still keep playing with it here, but the last thing we really work on, I think, that goes under more significant changes, the shirt. I try to have the shirt show better accuracy for the collar, imply somewhat of a chest there, right? And as well, once her head took this shape and I extended the arm, it allowed the torso to also cut in a little bit. So you can see under the far side, it kind of cuts in more to show that the edging of a torso would close in on the waist. And I couldn't really do that with how I had the arms positioned before. It made her just look really wide. And again, I was losing that height. So yeah, here we are finally getting some of the colors to a more finalized state. And like I said, just figuring out how I could get warmth but also keep it light at the same time. Where are the places where I could accentuate form still without it looking too bulky? I wanted it obviously to feel tall versus wide, but still be interesting to look at, still have attitude, still have a presence. And I think this Sprite has much more presence than all the other ones, which is why I knew I was obviously satisfied with it. But here I am just going in, adding more detail to the jackets and areas, figuring out, again, now that I have a definitive light source, where is the light truly shining? Where are the areas I can add darkness without it feeling too dark, right? You still need to be able to see what's going on. Where can I simplify all of those processes. Like I said, with the face and keeping it smooth and round. Same thing with the hair, or anywhere, the legs. It can be challenging to figure out exactly where you can round or make it look round, even though it's still very boxy and very sharp. So yeah, you can see the hair is much more muted here. Another coffee sip. Yeah, here I'm trying to basically create a shelf with her chest, right? Trying to show a little bit of depth there. And yeah, that's basically Elisa version 4. So that's it for the time lapse, but why don't I go and show you her in actuality? All right, so here we go. Here is Elisa, all 4 versions of her, and hopefully in this lineup you can really see the differences between the characters and how they evolved, right? As I said in the beginning, version 1, we kind of made her taller. We tried to give her more presence, stylize her a bit more. Version 2, I then realized areas I went too far, I didn't go far enough, and I wanted to hone in on specific details, right? I wanted to get the face more accurate. I wanted to get the hair more accurate. I had to shrink her because of the size of Goliath. Version 4, I was like, okay, time to refine all of my skills. Time to refine everything I've been through and everything I've done. So it's like, I want the stylized proportions. I want her to be accurate, but I want her to have presence and personality in her shape. And that gets us to version 4, and I'm really happy. And really, like, for me, there's no question that version 4 is the best one here, just in my mind and the way I'm looking at it. I think it has a lot of presence. I think it has a lot of depth. I don't think it looks like a generic sprite. But yeah, that's Elisa as far as this video is concerned. Hope it was a fun, quick, easy watch for you and that you learned something or just enjoyed the process. I will say that if you like pixel art, I've done a lot in the past, and some are much more simple than this. But as you can see, Goliath only has 3 here. And while I like the 3rd one, I think I could do a 4th one better. That would be in scale and to a similar style as the 4th version of Lisa. So if you like it, let me know. I'll do another one in the future. But yeah, until next time, everybody. See you then. Bye.